Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this short one, I want to talk about a small problem that I encountered while working on this small side project of mine. This is basically an editor that I created for myself that I basically use to write distraction free. Just a canvas, a prose mirror editor basically, and a toolbar at the bottom. On desktop, it's basically floating, and on mobile, as you can see on the right hand side, it's meant to appear at the bottom. But as you can already see, when I focus, the keyboard just comes on top of it and the toolbar is gone. Turns out that this is a big problem on iOS, whereas it works on Android, and it's basically no problem on desktop whatsoever. So when I was looking into how I'm going to solve this, I realized that there is something called the Visual Viewport API, which basically figures out the actual viewport that's visible. And we're going to use this to basically make sure that the toolbar is also going to be basically fixed at the bottom on iOS. How are we going to do this? I think for that, we first need to look into our current code base, which is basically a toolbar container. And this toolbar container, it's a div basically, which you can see is fixed, and it's fixed to the left and right, and also fixed to the bottom. However, fixed to the bottom for iOS means that it's literally fixed to the bottom here, even when the keyboard is basically visible. So if I close this, you can see it's basically still stuck to the bottom, and that's where the toolbar is going to stay even if I open up the keyboard. So there's one event that you can see here, the resize event, that we are going to now use when basically something changes. So what we will do here is I will basically have another effect, and I will basically make sure that when we have let's first of all make sure that we have this. If window dot visual viewport, if that exists, we want to attach a event listener to it. Visual viewport dot add event listener that reacts to resize, and then we will basically do something like fix position, right? And what we need to do is we also need to remove that. So on return, we will say window dot visual viewport dot remove event listener, and on resize and fix position. So let's first of all just have a look here. Fix position. So what are we going to do here? So first of all, what we want to figure out is basically I can show you here. We have a height of the visual viewport, and this height is basically going to be from at the top here to basically above the localhost border that you can see here. So it will basically exclude the keyboard, and that's what we basically want to have. So what we will basically do now here is, when we have this, we will take the reference element here and say current dot style, and then top, and then we will set that to basically our window dot visual viewport dot height, the height that we earlier found, pixels. right? And why is this complaining now? Of course, this needs to be available. So we will ignore the fact that there is no so we will ignore the fact that there is no toolbar ref. But if there is, we will basically set the value to the top. If we refresh here, we will notice that it hasn't changed a lot yet, because it's still like it just disappeared now. So what's the issue now? The issue now here is that this is basically the whole height of basically this element, right? And we've still put this to the bottom, so I need to remove the bottom here. And if you check now you see we've set it at the visual viewport height, but we also need to do that on the initial render, because right now, like if I do something like focusing, it will kind of work but also not kind of work. That's another problem. But let's start with the one first. When we have this effect happening, we will just run this whole thing once, because now we've basically make sure that when we refresh, the positioning is as expected, but it's still not fully there. The reason here for it is because now we have this whole thing as we have now this whole thing here up until here set as the top. So our toolbar is basically just in this position here. So we need to subtract that tiny bit from our positioning here. Instead of like, there's one way we could do something like a toolbar ref dot current dot height, and we can like take that off, something like this. We ignore this bit. We can do something like this, and you see it's already working. It is working, but what I would actually do here is, instead of doing this, I will fix the height difference in basically CSS. And I can do that by just saying translate y by 100% negative. So this CSS value basically just translates to something like transform translate y minus 100%, like this. And this basically does the same job, as you can already see here. This animation is a bit laggy, but that's basically just due to the simulator being slow with the events. But if you do this on your phone, you should be fine. And as you can see on your web editor, if you refresh this, it's still working as expected. So this is all working. So we've basically solved our problem. It's this effect here that we need to add in, and it will make sure that it's going to work across browsers and platforms. Just wanted to share this because I just came across this and I've had to figure out a while to understand like why this is happening. Let me know if you have any questions. I will try to answer all of them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.